to talk a little bit about exploiting your property across different mediums and this type of thing. Now, as you know, I started out writing novels, and I thought when I was writing novels that, gosh, if I were to write a novel and I really wanted to get some good publicity, one way to do it would be to start writing my novel and do the opening chapter as a short story, okay? And then once I've sent that out into a publisher, I've now got maybe 25,000 readers who now know a little bit about my book, and that will help me sell my novel. Orson Scott Card used to do that all the time. And so as a short story writer going into novels, it just sort of made sense that I should try to expand beyond the normal short story format into the novel format. Once I got going, I'd been working for several years as a novelist and decided to write my first big fantasy novel. And I started working on Rune Lords, and I realized as I was doing it that this would make a really good role-playing game, card game, video game, that type of thing. So I was reading an article in the newspaper one day about a little video game company down the street from us, and I decided to go in and show them my new fantasy novel that I was working on. And so I took my novel in. I had just finished up the first draft. It was into my publisher. I pretty much knew that it was going to be accepted because I knew that it was a pretty good fantasy novel, and Tor does a lot of fantasy. And when I took it in, the president of the company said, "Well, yeah, let me look at it." And then he called me back the next day, maybe 2 days later. He says, "Yeah, I've read it, and about 3 other guys in the office have read it. We really think this would make a great video game." And he said, the problem is that you don't have any video game credentials. So he said, "How good are you at writing proposals?" Well, I had been working at BYU helping professors write proposals and articles and this type of thing for a couple of years when I was in college, when I was a senior. And so I said, "Actually, I'm really good at writing proposals." So he said, "Well, we'd like you to write a proposal for us and see if you can get this contract, and if you can, we'll make you a designer on the video game." So he had me write up a proposal for StarCraft's Brood Wars. And I wrote up the proposal and gave it to him. We faxed it off to Blizzard Entertainment. I went home and stopped and got some milk to take to my wife. And when I got into the door, about 35 minutes later, he called me and he says, "Yeah, StarCraft, these guys over at Blizzard, they read the proposal, absolutely love it. We have the contract, and you need to come in tomorrow and, be the co-leader on the design team for this video game." So that's how I got into video games. So I did a few video games with them, and one day I realized that, maybe I should be working a little bit with film. And so I went to a seminar on how to be a movie producer with a couple of other producers, and they looked at some of my books and they said, "Dave, let's come here and talk for a little bit." And next thing I knew, I was working as a movie producer full-time for 3 years. Went out and raised millions of dollars to make movies and visited with studio heads and worked with directors and worked with various talent, with the writers and the directors and the artistic designers and all sorts of things. And about that time, this was like about 2000, 2001, I realized that I had evolved into something more than just being a novelist. I realized that I was writing across multiple platforms. And so I thought about what I should call myself, and I realized that what I should call myself was really an intellectual property developer, okay? Because I could take a movie and create a movie that would also make a good book, and I could also make one that would be a great video game, and I could do it, basically looking at various platforms that you could write in. And so for several years, I started calling myself an intellectual property designer. And then about 2 years ago, I was reading an article by Michael Capobianco, who says, "I realized that I'm something different than being just a novelist anymore." He said, "I think that I'm something," I said, "I'm going to call it an intellectual property designer," okay? So it was interesting that we both coined the same word for what we were, okay? Last night, 2 days ago, I had a friend who sent me an article by another fellow who was doing roughly the same thing. And he calls him a transmedia design engineer, okay? At which point I just told my friend, I says, oh, that's just a highfalutin way of saying that you're an intellectual property designer. But really, we're moving into a universe where, you can exploit a property in a number of different places. And when you go out and you make a move,